It's a great day in Kershaw County. It's a great day in this All-American County, and it's also a great day for our ponytails who took the South Carolina State National, South Carolina Championship. Welcome you all. We have a quorum. Everyone is present. And with that, we are called to order, and I ask Dave Snodgrass to lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand?
Let's pray. Father, we come to you this evening, and we're thankful. Lord, thankful for the ability to be here and to be a part of this assembly here. Lord, I'm thankful to be a part of this country in which we enjoy freedoms. Lord, to peacefully assemble, and Lord, to conduct government business in this manner, and Lord, to come and to voice our opinions, to have the freedom of speech. Lord, not everyone is able to enjoy these freedoms, and Lord, we know that these freedoms come directly from you, and we're also thankful for the individuals who have fought for those freedoms as a part of our military, and Lord, we pray for them. Lord, we pray for those who wear the uniform here locally, those of a law enforcement officer or a first responder or a detention center officer, Lord, or a fireman. We pray that you would place a hedge of protection around them as they serve this great county. Lord, I pray that you would be with us in these moments as we conduct the business of this county. We love you. Praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rick.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend David. If you keep that up, we're going to make you our permanent preacher up here. I think I need to come to your church on Sunday. Thank you. We're called to order. Thank you, David. Time now for public comments. I ask Mr. DeBose to take us through this. How many do we have signed up tonight?
Mr. Chairman, we have six people signed up. One scratched their name. And so six that all get 5 minutes each. The first one is Ben Tobin.
Say again the last name?
Tobin, T-O-B-I-N.
Mr. Tobin, please come up. And as you do so, I want to remind you all that these are designed to hear from you. There's no question and answer back and forth. And I ask you to retain the quorum of this body so that information may be handled by the government bodies before you. And also in around 5 minutes, we'll give you a notice when your time's up. Sir, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for having me in front. First, I'd like to make an announcement.
Is that microphone working?
Oh?
Yeah, bring it over where you can talk to it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right, I got additional 2 minutes on that. All right.
All right.
My acknowledgement goes to those who provided me the information for mailing, to those who personally respond to my request, and to the editor who decided to print my newsletter. The matter of consolidating the Sheriff's Department with the detention center opens up questions we need to ask and being informed of the questions that one needs to be aware of. Our citizens need the opportunity to address this matter in which county council meeting is not formatted for discussion. Briefly, some of these questions. Using the detention facility for training purposes for deputies that's vying for position. In these two institutions, there's different types of field exposure. Danger of personal and attitude singularity that will transcend from one place to the other. Certification process. Are these recruits recruiting from another department? If so, why? Is it open for public review? Background checks. As well as you check the individual backgrounds, region of origin, past and present, is being vetted for contemporary way of thinking towards diversity and social status. That needs to be looked at also. Training staff. Singularity pipeline is a danger to diversification towards mental, cultural, and personal attitudes. Once again, regional origin. What is the fail-safe policy? Paper versus reality. How deep is the bureaucratic process? I'm asking the county council to table the request for a merger until there's a town hall meeting consisting of broad panels and setting a format for question and possible answers. Sessions with no individual group, with no individual that attempt to have a gripe session, or no group that attempt to have a gripe session be done in an orderly fashion. In closing, you cannot know the answer until the questions are understood. Thank you. I'm gonna pass this over.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin, and pass it to the clerk, and she will give it to us. Thank you, sir.
The next person that signed up is H.L. Brown.
Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
My concerns are dealing with the sheriff taking control over the detention center as well as the sheriff's department. My concerns is those are both important positions, and with him holding two positions like that, will he be able to really focus on each part of his job? So I would just like to just say, ask, for me being a citizen, that placing that many positions on one person is a little too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. DeBose.
The next person signed up is Wesley Corley. Corey? Crow, sorry.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And it is not a great day in Kershaw County. Y'all recklessly took money for projects and wasted it on an underwater park. And you could have used it for fire protection, but you didn't do it. Also, you wasted money on some kind of pad. You wasted money on some kind of bond. And yes, Mr. Sheriff Lee Bone can't handle two jobs. And I can tell you why. I met the man. I know the man. And he knows me. Furthermore, as far as the detention center, when I was brought up, the sheriff was over the detention center and the sheriff's department. And they ain't but one county over. And if the sheriff, I know this man here can handle probably more than two jobs. But the reason y'all don't want him to have it is because y'all got your hands in it. Now, call me a liar. That's right. Now, I want to know another thing. I got a 20-year-old truck. Why y'all gonna charge me $108 to pay taxes with 150 miles on it? That's outrageous. Lee County, same truck, $36.38. Y'all ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Folks, they ain't doing nothing but taking your money and putting it right here. I know where you're putting it. Because all these projects you built, I'm assuming, oh, it's your buddies. They gave you kickbacks. I know how the game's played. And you can look at me any way you want to. I ain't scared. I'm crazy. And people know I am. But I'm going to tell you this. It's a shame that y'all treat the disabled and the elderly the way you do. That's a pitiful shame. You're going to charge a man probably, he got a half acre of land. He probably ain't, he's in an accident. And y'all going to charge him taxes, raise his taxes. Y'all are a disgrace. Y'all need to be replaced with a reputable people that know what they're doing, such as engineers, common people that's lived in the world. But y'all don't see that. All y'all see is dollar signs. Well, the dollar signs is going to stop. I'm going to tell you that now. Because we're going to vote you out. And if these people agree with me, I'm happy. If they don't, I'm happy. But we're going to vote you out. I promise you that.
Thank you,
Ain't
sir.
Ain't nobody here. But that man standing right there, Judge, Mr. Bone. I told that man I'd whip him in his sheriff's department. And me and him, we talked it out. That's how two men talk things out. That's how people communicate. Y'all don't communicate with your public. Y'all leave us in the dark. Well, we ain't in the dark no more. We can see the light. And we can see your pockets filling up too. Thank y'all. Y'all have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. Mr. DeBose.
Next person signed up is Sheriff Lee Bones.
Sheriff.
Always a pleasure to talk to my favorite county council in all of Kershaw County. Over the past 2 months, and this is about the jail. Over the past 2 months, I've personally talked with each one of you. Each one of you have my cell phone, my email address. Each one of you has reached out and done a lot of research. This is a very serious topic. I want to thank every one of you for doing it. That's what I wanted from the beginning, is to do some serious research and make the best decision for Kershaw County. I'm the elected chief law enforcement officer in Kershaw County. People put me where I'm at. Running a jail is a law enforcement function. I'm also a member of the South Carolina Sheriff's Association. Since 75% of the sheriffs in South Carolina run their jails, the South Carolina Sheriff's Association is the largest network of jail administrators in South Carolina. Sumter County Sheriff Anthony Dennis, president of the South Carolina Sheriff's Association, which is the largest association of jail administrators in South Carolina, spoke in favor of the sheriff having the jail in Kershaw County during my presentation last month. Councilman Jimmy Jones, which is the only council member with jail administrator experience, is in favor. I think of him as the subject matter expert when it comes to running jails, since he's run Kershaw County Jail. He's in favor of this merger. I'm still convinced tonight, as much as I was 2 months ago, that merging the sheriff's office and the detention center is what's in the best interest of Kershaw County. I think the timing is perfect now. But I'm not going to take up any more time representing the issue tonight. I'm sure you're all prepared, and I'm sure you all prepared yourselves to make an informed decision tonight, and I'm going to trust your decision. As I said from the beginning, this is not a fight between the sheriff and council. All this is a discussion on what's in the best interest of Kershaw County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you very much indeed.
The next person that signed up is Fielding Pringle.
Ms. Pringle.
Chairman Burns, members of council.
I need to get the microphone over to you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
All right. Good evening, Chairman Burns, members of council. My name is Fielding Pringle, and I'm the circuit defender for the 5th Judicial Circuit, which means I'm your public defender here in Kershaw County. I came and spoke to you guys last month. I don't think everyone was here, but I was able to address council, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, or if you see me glancing down at my phone. I'm not checking my text messages. I have my timer on so I can monitor my time. Don't go over. But I did want to come here and just share with you, again, my opposition and request that you retain control of the jail. As I said last time, I've met the sheriff, and there is nothing personal about this request whatsoever. It has nothing to do with not wanting Sheriff Bone to be in charge of the jail in particular. It is a much more, a larger concern and a more long-term concern, really. Seems like a lovely person, and I do believe that he has the best of intentions. I just don't happen to think it's a good idea. I have been a lawyer since 1996. Most of that time I have been a public defender, spent a large amount of that time in Richland County as a public defender, and took over the circuit defender position last year from Mr. Strickler, who I believe some of you may remember. I can just tell you, in my time practicing law, I have practiced all over the state. I know attorneys locally, attorneys all over the state who have come to Kershaw County. I have been in jails, detention centers all over the state. I know lawyers who have spent time in jails all over the state and have spent time in this jail. And while I recognize that there are issues at times, jails are going to have issues. But this jail is run very, very well, and it has a very good reputation among attorneys, among families of inmates, among defendants, and among the people that have to go in and work in the jail on a regular basis from the legal community. It is known for treating inmates and family members and lawyers and our staff with respect, dignity, humanity, courtesy, responsiveness. I have never reached out to them when I have not gotten a response or an issue addressed that we needed to get addressed, though very few arise, and we've had very few problems, really whatsoever in my time here. I spent a lot of time at the jail some years ago prepping for a death penalty trial, and I just can't tell you, but how detailed and careful and cautious they are to tend to attorney-client confidentiality, to attend to security and safety, and it is a unique place, and it is being run, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many, many others, very, very well. As I said to you last time, and I say this with my whole heart, the safety and security aspect of the jail, I think I have as much vested interest in that as any law enforcement member, any law enforcement community, because not just my clients are in there, but my lawyers are in there every day. I have 4 lawyers who are public defenders here who are in that detention center every day. I'm in there. My clients are in there. And so their safety and security is just as much my interest as it is law enforcement. Finally, I think you really do need to be concerned about the difference in these 2 jobs. Being a correctional officer and being a law enforcement deputy, and what they're talking about is a brand new deputy, so using this as a training facility. Those are very different jobs. And a correctional officer has a duty to ensure that the inmates are safely housed and protected and kept secure in the jail from the community. And they have the duty to ensure the protection of their constitutional rights. People that work for the sheriff, they have some of those obligations, but their job is evidence gathering, prosecution, arrest for criminality. And when you take both of those and you blend them into one job, I think you end up with a real divided sense of loyalty and a potential conflict of interest, because their loyalty would and should be to the sheriff. And it's just very different. I do see that I'm running out of time, and I thank you so much for hearing me out and taking the time to consider this. I do think that you're doing an excellent job and would ask that you retain control of the jail.
Thank you very much indeed for making that long journey. I appreciate it. Mr. DeBose.
Mr. Chairman, the last person that signed up is Tom Webb III.
Mr. Webb.
What I'm going to say won't have much meaning to most people. I'll keep it real short. Country's in terrible tension, and I think we need to be careful not to alienate people. There was a choice I was called on to make among some of the associates, some of the people that we know for a committee, and I didn't feel that I had everything I needed to make a really wise decision, so I flipped a coin, and I probably hurt some people's feelings. But I want to defend that. It's called casting lots. That when you are pressed to do something sometimes, the way to resolve it is to flip a coin. It's very biblical. It goes way back to the Urim and Thummim of the Old Testament, when the priest would take these objects and use them to arrive at a conclusion, and lives actually depended on it. When the 11 disciples that were left after Jesus was crucified, Matthias was picked to fill in for the 12th spot by lots. So flipping a coin is not necessarily very flippant. It's a way to achieve a certainty of what you're going to do, and also to dispel any of the egos that might get involved when people are going to argue over this or that and who wins the argument. If you just flip a coin, that takes the egos and the pressure out of it. Anyway, I did this, and I've probably hurt some feelings, so I'm taking this opportunity to explain it, and I thank you very much. If you got any questions, ask me.
Thank you, Mr. Webb, and thanks for your service on the Clean Community Committee. Mr. DeBose.
That concludes the sign-up list.
All right, with that, we move to the adoption of the agenda. Do you have that up on the board yet?
Mr. Chairman.
How about on the other one? Hang on a second. Yeah, please, Mr. Bozard.
Cancel what I'm saying. Get it. Never mind.
Mr. Bose, you wanted to say something about the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, yes, on the agenda, I believe you have it for consideration under number 7, new business, cancellation of November 22nd, November 26th council meetings. Those are the second meetings of each month. Previously, on a preliminary agenda discussion, you indicated you wished to add cancellation to September 24th meeting. At that time, I indicated I had a time-sensitive matter, but that time-sensitive matter no longer exists. Now, Mr. Chairman, by way of explanation, in the event council should wish to cancel the second meeting in September, the question is, how is that exigent in August? Well, it becomes exigent in August if council wishes to do it, because you need certainty in scheduling, particularly for public hearings. Public hearings, as you know, are scheduled in advance, advertised in advance. Chronicle Independent has deadlines for advertising. I can see the clerk indicating. So if council has any inclination to also cancel the second meeting in September, it would be my request that they do so now so that we will have certainty in advertising for public hearings on my behalf and on behalf of the clerks.
All right. In other words, the Bethune item at tab B is not time sensitive.
It is not.
And so I'll exercise my prerogative and say I want to put it back what it was in the original draft of the agenda on item number 7 under new business for discussion later on. We can decide later, but we need to put it back on the agenda that it should read, instead of cancellation of October 22nd, it would read, in addition, cancellation of 24 September, comma, October 22nd. Can we have a second to that?
Second.
A second from Mr. Bozard. Discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. I guess I have a question. I mean, I'm seeing this for the first time. We've canceled 2 meetings that I did not support, July and August. And now we're going to cancel a meeting in October, November, and September?
Well, potentially, you'd have to vote on it. Mr.
Have to vote
Jones.
on it.
And the motion would have to
I
pass.
understand, but that's what the motion, I mean,
Yes,
that's
that's
the
what the
amendment on the
motion is,
table.
yes.
I can't support that. You know, folks, we ran to serve. We meet twice a month, and I think that's what we ought to do. And I do appreciate, Mr. Bose, you bringing up time-sensitive issues. Take, for example, what we're discussing tonight, employees' benefits, the jail. Those are very important issues, but we've had to postpone those and kind of wait till we had another meeting. So I certainly will not support that, and I would be surprised if the majority of my colleagues did.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion on the amendment to the agenda? Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think the record would reflect that the county attorney and the clerk to council have indicated that if the council is going to do it, they need to do it now because that is exigent. We need to know.
We got that. Thank you. We'll get to it later on.
Can you restate the motion?
Our motion is amend item number 7 on new business to read from cancellation of October 22nd to be amended to add 24 September as well. So September, October, November. So there'll be 1 meeting a month once we get to that item, number 7, if we decide to vote in that direction, okay? So that's the amendment, and we'll vote on it up or down when we get to it, all right?
We got a motion on the floor, don't we, sir?
That's the motion I made.
Okay, and has it been seconded?
Yes.
Yes,
So we need to take a vote.
that's correct. But we have a discussion, Mr. Jones. Any other discussion? Seeing there is none, let's move to a vote to amend the agenda as stated. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Burns, Mr. Bozard, and Mr. Connell. Those opposed to the amendment, Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Jones. The motion carries, and the agenda is amended. Mr. Bozard, do you have an amendment?
Yes, please. Under old business, the extension of the water lines at Dover Mills and up Highway 5, I need to take that off because the information I was looking for did not come back to me at
Okay.
any time to discuss it.
Can we have a second?
Second that.
Mr. Connell, it's second. Any discussion? All right, we'll pick that up at a future date. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, Mary, and so amended. We move now to the next item, which is approval of minutes. It should be up on your board, and it should be,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
point of order. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the amended agenda.
oh, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Now, we have the amendment made. Now, can we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended on item number 7? Mr. Tucker,
I make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Gardner. Any discussion? Seeing there is none, let's move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Connell, Mr. Bozard, Burns, and Gardner. All those opposed? Mr. Jones. It passes 6-1. We move now to approval of minutes at tab A. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Mr. Gardner, thank you. A second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Bozard. Any discussion?
Mr.
Yeah,
I yield.
Okay. Point of order, I'm going to abstain from voting due to my absence of travel.
correct?
Ditto.
All right, so we had 2 absent. Any further discussion? Let's move to a vote. All those in favor of the minutes, please signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous with Mr. Snodgrass and Tucker abstaining. Okay, we move now to the first item on the agenda thereafter, which is an ordinance, first reading of an ordinance authorizing the conveyance of Bethune Rural Water Company at tab B. Okay, Mr. Carpenter, can you introduce it? And perhaps we'll get into an explanation later once we get it on the floor. Mr. Carpenter.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, this is an ordinance that allows the transfer of property owned by Kershaw County to the Bethune Rural Water Company.
Very good. Can we have a motion to approve this ordinance?
Make the motion we approve this ordinance, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. A second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Gardner. Ken, can you take us through it a little bit, please?
Mr. Chairman, yes, in 1980, Kershaw County apparently facilitated a grant from the Farmers Home Administration to allow the construction of a water tank and water lines to be used by the Bethune Rural Water Company, which Bethune Rural Water Company has used since that date, has maintained since that date, and this merely authorizes Kershaw County to convey it back to them 39 years later, because Kershaw County, I don't think, council has to make the determination, but Kershaw County doesn't operate it, doesn't maintain it, has nothing to do with it, except they own it. And it's leased to Bethune Rural Water Company now. So we want to convey it to them so they can own it.
Thank you. Discussion. Looks pretty straightforward to me, and there's being no discussion, we'll move quickly to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, Mary, and moves on to a second reading later in September. We'll move now to old business. The first item on there after the deletion of the water line issue is item number 2, restoration of retirement benefits. There's some data on tab C and also on the board. Some of that may be new to you and may require some explanation. Do we have a motion on this? Mr. Jones, I believe this is your item.
Mr. Chairman, I so move, but I want to state my motion this way. I move the Kershaw County Retirement Benefit Plan be amended so as to return all employees that were on the payroll January 10, 2011 to the retirement plan that was in effect at that time, thus grandfathering those employees to be covered by the old 50-50 plan should they successfully retire from Kershaw County. This change will not affect any employees hired after January 10, 2011. They are covered by the current $300/month plan already in effect. They were hired at that position and with that understanding. This will not cover these qualified employees once they reach age 65. At that point, those retirees would be covered by Medicare and the $300 a month plan that is currently in effect. Thank you.
Do you have a hard copy for the rest of us? Maybe we could ask the clerk so we could see it. That's a
I don't
pretty-
think, no, I don't have another copy for you.
We could get it Xerox.
Absolutely, you can get it.
All right.
But,
Let's get a second and maybe have that done. Can we have a second, please?
I'm going to second for discussion.
Okay, a second for discussion. Mary, Danny, can you perhaps make a copy of that? With that, Mr. Jones, you led off. Would you like to discuss it a little bit?
Sure, I would. All right, y'all need to listen, please. Okay. The cost for the yearly, I think the yearly cost for the year's cost for the current retirees that are on board now, I think we have, what is it, 26?
It's 23,400.
No, I know it's 23,000, but current, is it 18, 20? How many?
17.
17. It's 17 currently retired now. That would be $23,000 more. The cost to cover the length of the restored benefits that I mentioned would be for the employees that are still working, but that were hired prior to January 10, 2011, would be $330,000. But that is a very hard number. It would, bottom line is that probably wouldn't be the amount. It'd probably be a lot less, because that's assuming that the current covered employees to retire and live a healthy life. And that's just not realistic. You know, some may not retire, some may not make it to retirement, some may retire and only be around for a year, some may live a full healthy life to 100. We just don't know, but this is taking a worst case scenario based on information that I got from administration. And of course, you know, always, as we've done in the past, if in the future the Kershaw County finds they cannot afford this change, they can always go back, as they've done in the past, and amend the budget again. But I want to say this. Kershaw County can't afford this. We can't afford it. Mr. Carpenter, I'm going to ask you your opinion. Can we afford this?
I can find the money within the budget if council
Thank
requests.
you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So we can't afford this, and I think it's little money out of a budget of $28 million. And this little bit of money will go a long ways to do the right thing. And I just appreciate that. And I have some other, I'm sure there's going to be some questions directed at me. If I can't answer, or if I don't have the right answer, I'll get Mr. Carpenter, Mr. DeVos to pitch in. But I look forward to the dialogue.
We have a chart on the board, and out of fairness to all councilmen, may not have a chance to see it. Can I ask Mr. Carpenter to talk about what that chart says?
Yes, sir. The chart that's currently in front refers to the individuals that are currently retired from Kershaw County that were affected by the change in retirement programs in January of 2011. It's 17 individuals. That is the increase in the OPEB. OPEB is the other post-employment benefits. That's an accounting term. It's used to reflect the implied and incurred cost to the citizens of Kershaw County for, in this particular case, changing the plan. So the book value we're required to put it in our financial statements would increase by approximately $1.5 million to the long-term liabilities the county has to book as a debt to the county.
So total debt goes up $1.5 million.
Well, not debt in the sense of
Long-term
bond payments
liability.
or things like that. It's
Liability.
not that kind of debt, but it's our book liability, our assets and our liabilities. Yes, sir.
All right. And just to further Jimmy's presentation, is there another chart or two that talks to this? Or is this the one you wanted to show?
Yes, sir, there are other ones up there as well that show, when Mr. Jones referred to the cost of grandfathering employees, this refers to that cost right there. The grandfathered employees, a total of 82 employees currently working for this county, were also working when the plan change was made. Of those 82, 53 of them have single coverage, 23 have coverage with their spouse, 6 of them are not covered by the county. So a total of 76 employees. As Mr. Jones indicated, I can't tell you what the cost would be tomorrow or a year from now or 2 years from now for those employees, but the cost to the county, if they all retired, would be an additional $336,000 a year.
Got his number.
Yes, sir, you got that from me.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is everybody tracking so far? All right, and there's another chart too, I thought. Ooh, okay, we'll try to read that.
That's just the current, those are the 17 individuals that are currently retired under, that were affected by the change in plans in January of 2011. So since January 2011, we've had 17 employees retire that are covered by some form of retiree coverage. And the cost for those 17 would be an additional $23,000 a year to move them back to the old plan.
That pretty well state the case, Jimmy?
It does.
So the 82 plus the 2017 adds up to about $250,000 in cost, and a $1.5 million, I guess you'd call that liability against the audit of Gadsby. Is that how that's read?
Long term.
Yes, it's liability, and if council wishes to delve into the accounting aspect, we have Mark Quigley here who can answer those questions. I'm not an accountant, so I don't want to mislead council by representing myself as one. Standard disclaimer there. But the $1.5 million was based on those 17. That is not the cost of the 76 as well. That would be an additional cost on top of that. That again, it's not. Mark can explain better how that affects us, but we have to book it in our books every year. Bond rating agencies generally look at that when they look at our books to understand what our long-term liabilities are.
Without entree, is it okay if we bring Mr. Quigley forward? He's our wonderful CPA. This is before income tax. I normally don't like to see the CPA until then.
It's about that.
Thanks for coming, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Your increased costs on your OPEB liability, if y'all remember, that's on your 34 statements. And so it lists all your liabilities of the county. Right now, your OPEB liability is about $6.3 million. If you factor in these additional 76 people, it goes to about $9 million. So you're looking at about, right now, that 1.5 only represents the 17 people that retired between January 11 and June 30th of 2019. But you can't just carve those people out. The change is to include an additional 83 people. So when you factor that in, your liability increases not from 1.5, but to 2.7 million. So that 2.7 million would be an additional liability that would be recorded on to the county's books, meaning that's an additional liability that if everybody in the county retired today, your liability would be about $9 million of insurance proceeds, insurance policies that you'd have to pay out.
And that factors in business as what we know is risk. And does that impact our bond ratings and things of that nature?
It hasn't yet, but you never know when it could. That's along with, you've also got the retirement, the pension liabilities on your books now too. And that continues to go up as well. And so at some point in time, these bond rating agencies, and everybody's got them, so you're not in a boat alone. But that was one of the reasons why the ordinance was passed and it was done the way it was done, was to try to help control some of the costs for this OPEB, because we knew this was coming. I had talked to council about, hey guys, you need to make sure that y'all understand this OPEB liability is coming. That was why the decision was made back then, was to try to control some of that cost so the liability wasn't such an enormous amount. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands that's the route the council wants to go. There's some things that you've got to consider with not only additional premium costs that you're going to be paying out each year, which would be cash flow, but you've got an increased liability that's going to be on your books, which may or may not impact your bond rating.
Just one more point, and I think this teases out the issues for Mr. Jones. Mr. Connell and I and Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Tucker attended a conference last week, and they had the likes of the Mr. Merle Smith and a few other of our legislators at the State House. And you remember 2 or 3 years ago when the pension funds and all that began to fail, they decided that each year they would increase the amount that the counties paid. And so is this and it will happen again next year. So the compensation, pension, and all that sort of thing is increasingly being laid on the shoulders of the counties. Is that in the same genre of what you're talking about, Mark?
That would be correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Snodgrass.
Mr. Quigley, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Were you our accountant when these changes were made?
I was the auditor when the changes were made.
The auditor would change. Because I thought I heard you say something in your statement that you said because of the OPEB, that's why you advised them of this, how this is going to change, and that's
I advised
you
council.
advised.
When the change, I knew when the change was coming, and this has been phased in a couple of different things. So when it first came in, you basically took your OPEB liability, and it was divvied out over 30 years. So you only recognized about 1/30 of it.
Right.
2 years ago, they just said, no, you're going to book the whole liability. And so when this was getting ready to hit back in the 11 year, which would have been 11-12 audit, we had told council the year before, y'all need to look at this because this is coming. We had advised all of our clients that, you need to look at your retirement benefits for health insurance because this liability is coming and you need to plan accordingly. We didn't certainly say you had to change the plan.
Sure,
We
yeah,
said,
I'm not trying to.
hey guys, make sure you look at this because we had some counties, they were paying 100%. And you want to talk about an astronomical liability they were getting ready to book. It was incredible. And so, yeah, we had informed council at that point in time, hey, these changes are coming. You need to look at your plan. Council did at that point in time. They decided to change to what the plan is currently, that the people that had retired January of 11 would be grandfathered in. Anybody retired after that, it would be $300 a month.
So there was
that
no.
was-
Would you repeat that one time, please? Repeat what you just said.
Those that had retired before January of 2011 were grandfathered into the plan.
Not current employees, those
Not
who
current
had
employees, just had
retired.
retired. So anybody that had not retired by that date
They came
fell
under the new
under
plan.
they fell under the new plan at $300 a month.
Well, that's exactly what I said.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
No, but we're talking about grandfathering in people who were.
Y'all are now talking about grandfather people in that were employed at that date, not that retired at that date.
Right.
We've got two separate issues.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I think this is really helpful. Al, please.
Yes,
Okay, go down.
not 11, but right now today, people retiring right now today, do you have any figures for that? I'm not worried about retroactive. I'm talking about from this point forward.
Under what plan? The old plan or the new plan?
The new plan.
The plan that exists as of right now?
Yes,
If you retire right now, under the plan that's there, you get $300
right.
a month. And so your OPEB liability under that scenario is about $6.3 million.
Other discussion?
With
I'm sorry.
probably have some discussion, but we won't need to have Mark up here. Unless you
Go
do.
ahead, Mr. Tucker.
If you don't mind staying, because what you're saying now is different from what I understood then. I want to make a couple points, and it came from the previous administrator. We, and Councilman Gardner looked at me just now like deer in headlights, were under the understanding that it was everybody who was employed
Talking to your mic.
that's going to retire out of the system, not who had retired by 2011. So that's why this came back up, because we've got these 17 employees that are having some difficulties maintaining their health insurance through the county that has given their adult life to the county in serving. So I think there was either some bad misunderstanding. I'm not blaming you at all. Let me say that first and foremost.
No, I understand.
But I also know what was said, not with you, but privately in other conversations, not to throw anybody underneath the bus. There's a couple things that I wanted to just go over. First, Mr. Carpenter, the $336,000, what you gonna cut out the budget? Because when we did the budget, I didn't remember that being fluff. Who's gonna get hurt?
Well, and again, I'm not saying that that's would be a cost that we would actually incur unless every single employee was able to retire all at once. That's the potential cost if they all did retire at once. Obviously, Mr. Tucker, I'd make it work, but it wouldn't be pretty.
So that's number one of my concerns. The other, is this Gatsby 45 we're talking about?
This is Gatsby, this is the old Gatsby 45,
45,
yes.
yeah, because that's what it was back then.
It's now Gatsby 75.
Okay, I'm just up in the numbers, huh? To what you just said about our bond rating and our ability to borrow money, just went to that class as the chairman spoke about this past week at the conference. And yes, your lenders are looking at what your liabilities and what your Gatsby 45, 75 is, and they're rating you and loaning you accordingly. I mean, I sat in that class with the chairman, and I think Ben was in there, and Vic. And it does, and that's where I'm having a little heartburn on trying to do all of it, Mr. Jones, versus trying to do the $23,000 where the 17 employees are already retired, and then let's address the other 76, 76, whatever the number is, in our next budget cycle so we can address the liability part. Now, I know we say that it's 1.5, but that's not 1.5 cash. That's a liability and a paper number. But, worst case scenario, if something happens and everybody decides to leave, it could be a possible liability. So with that being said, what I would like to offer, Mr. Chairman, is an amendment to the motion.
Let me ask you a question. So you would do it for some, but not for all?
I would do it for the ones who are currently retired. So you can't pick winners and losers. That's what you're trying to do. I'm doing it for the ones who are currently addressing that issue. I'm separating out what is present and what is future.
Yeah, I think
I would just caution you one thing. I'm not a legal expert by any means. You need to make sure that you're able to do that because that could be construed as a discriminatory plan.
That's my point.
And I'm not sure that you're able to do that.
Yeah, I think, Mark, you're getting to my point. You've got 17, then you've got 82. Or I think that's the numbers, but you've got a large number of people that are not being treated equitably, and you're setting yourself up for either a complaint now or a future budget. You might as well vote for it now or decide to take it up. And what I was talking to Jimmy about earlier with the coffee is we are now out of the recession, and maybe there is an opportunity for us at a later time, but that's not the motion in front of us. There's an opportunity during the next budget cycle to do the whole thing, but that's not the motion before us. But do you want to make the motion?
Yes, sir, I do. But let me address what you just said. We just picked who was retired in 2011 and who wasn't to cover our liabilities. So did you not discriminate against the ones that were not eligible for retirement or not ready to retire at that time? I'm only following what we just did 8-9 years ago.
Yeah, but at that point in time, it was everybody that retired, and so you had made the motion, or you had made the change, so everybody else. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying you need to look at it because let's say, for instance, this. Let's say that somebody could have retired. They were before retirement age, so they knew once the new law had passed, they were going to have only $300. Let's say they were under family and they would have to pay out an additional $700 for retirement, and they decided not to do it, or they're in the same position now. So if you only carve it out for 17 people, you could have the possibility of saying, somebody coming back and saying, wait a second, now I could have retired and I chose not to because I knew what the cost was going to be of my increased insurance. You could have a situation where they would file some kind of complaint. I'm just saying, just make sure that's taken under advisement, because I'd hate for that situation to come up.
And I appreciate your concern on that, and I don't have a problem having the administrator to do some legal research with our county attorney. But there too, I just go back to they're not retired, and then I didn't say we're not going to address it. I'm just blocking off how we're doing it.
You're taking steps.
And I think that it's the most prudent thing to do so we can cover that liability piece by piece without upsetting the whole apple cart of the budget. And that's my reason behind it, not to discriminate against anybody or leave anybody out. And I most definitely don't pick winners and losers, because I think the person that does that is the loser. I truly believe that. Let me say this too, because I'm real busy when I go to these conferences. Florence County, right down the road, pays 90%. All I'm trying to do, and other council members up here, is to go back to a 50-50, which is equitable to help these. And this is not any dependents. This is our employees, who we don't always pay the best wages to try to help them where they can live a decent life and take care of their medical needs. So that's what my passion is, and I just want to state my amendment, Mr. Chairman, if I could, that I make a motion that we approve the $23,416.80 of costs for the 17 employees that's currently retired as of 2011.
Mr. Tucker, excuse me, interjecting you, but don't you want to include those that have retired subsequent to January 10th, 2011, and prior to some date? You have more retirees than that number.
No, any retiree prior to January 10th was already covered by the
Right.
plan we're discussing.
Right.
So they're not affected.
So he wants to add a new date?
He just-
What's the new date?
But what he's asking is those employees who retired between the dates of January 10th, 2011 and June 30th, 2019.
Right.
That's what I was looking for, June 30th,
30th,
2019.
right. Okay, you want the closing date?
Yes.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
June 30th, what?
2019,
And that is how many people?
17.
Those individuals that we've.
So it'd
Okay.
be that, so your increased liability would be the $1.5 million.
That's, the cost there is, the liability, not the cost.
Yeah, liability.
Is 1.
Do we not want to get a
$1.5
second
million.
on the motion
And,
or continue
and then,
amendment?
can we have a second on that?
I
motion?
do,
Okay, Mr. Jones seconds it. Further discussion?
yes.
Yeah, Jimmy?
This give me a chance to bring a solution in, because I'm really good about bringing solutions to the table. We talk about our liability and the $9 million. You know, you guys had no problem in doing a $17.2 million bond for economic development that's going to be a $30 million payback in 30 years, which has accomplished nothing in economic development, nothing. And, you know, we talk about the $23,000. Where are we going to find it? Well, you know, we were talking about painting water tanks at the last meeting that was going to run maybe close to $70,000 or $80,000. But everybody was excited about that.
Not true.
Said Mr. Cornell, I do stand corrected on that. But anyway, Mr. Tucker, I appreciate your hard work. I appreciate the amendment. I'm going to support the amendment. Listen, we promised, and you can ask any employee that's here, they were told that they would be grandfathered in. And they found out they weren't. And I just think that, and I was told that by the current administration. I'm going to get to you in a minute. So I know it's going to come up where you dropped the ball, Jimmy Jones, because you didn't get it in writing. No, we're going to drop the ball if we don't do something tonight that we know about.
Mr. Connell.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Seem like you're on the same line, so go ahead.
Well, I just want, just for transparency, make it clear, crystal clear. There's not a one of us up here this affects. Not a one of us. Not one council member sitting up here that this affects. So I'm not doing this for me. And I have 0 relatives work for the county. So I'm not doing this for my family. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, and we can do it, and we had already thought we had done it. So I'm trying to make good on what I thought was already in place.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Connell.
So, for me, this comes down to a matter of statutory construction. I can't support Mr. Jones' motion or the amendment for multiple reasons, but I'll name the ones that stick out to me the most. So if you look back at the actual law, which is really all I can work off of instead of someone told me or this is what I understood at the time, I've tortured the statutory language in the code and the benefits manual with our county attorney trying to interpret it any other way that I could that would line up with what's been suggested tonight. But I can't do it, and that's the law. We have had instances up here on the council in my short time up here where there's been proposed language in what the law would be, and the discussion that we've had over 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour did not line up. Our understanding did not line up with what was in the printed word on the page, which is what matters when this body acts as a majority and votes on it to codify something or make it the law of this county. And we've corrected that. There was a time, I remember with the shipping container ordinance, we were talking about various issues. We had an understanding, but the language did not reflect it. And we had to call it out and change the language on the page. Unfortunately, back in 2010, it looks like the language did not reflect exactly what the intent was. And, that is unfortunate. I think we are in a better position in the county right now to be able to better compensate on the retirement side for elective health care benefits our employees. That can help attract people. It can help attract probably a little bit older talent, people who are more seasoned are interested in some of those benefits a little bit more than new hires. With that said, and I'd like to see us do it, increase those benefits for people who are currently retired. I can't go back 9 years, almost a decade, and try to retroactively correct language that this doesn't line up with anything that I've heard tonight. And I've tried to read it every way I could to interpret it that way. And in good faith, I just can't. Thank you.
Mr. Snodgrass.
No, sorry. I yield.
Yeah, Tom?
I support the amendment because I believe we need to make these 17 people whole to what they thought they were getting. But at the same time, whether it's voted up or down, we need to address it during the budget in the spring when we go into the next budget session, and we need to address it for all of our employees. This fixes these 17 in this amendment, but I think that we need to address, and whatever, it may stay at $300, we may go to $500, we may do whatever, but come budget discussions in the spring, this needs to be addressed because we need to take care of our employees. This was done at a time when the recession was here. It was a financial decision as much as anything else. The economic climate is better now, and I think we're in better shape to do something. So come budget time this spring, I want to make sure that we do address this. Thank you.
Mr. Snodgrass.
Yeah, I just want to add, echo some comments that have already been said, but this really, it's a tough issue, and it tears me up because when I look at the spreadsheets, there are faces behind those numbers, and I hate the situation that we have placed ourselves in. However, I mean, as much as I want to do, it's a scary practice of kind of making this type of correction. And for me, I wasn't here, and so for me, this date of January 10 of 2011, to me, that's an arbitrary date. Why? And I feel for the employees who are working here and working here now. So, and the other thing that I caught is I've poured through this. I've poured through this agenda for hours trying to find any way. Not only was this read 3 times, 3 readings, this has been revised. It's in the agenda packet. This has been revised in 2011 and also 2012. Now, it wasn't revised for the issue of retirement, but it was revised. The whole document was revised for bereavement policy and I think something else. So this document has crossed this desk many times. And I think those would have been the moments to catch this. And I hate that I'm saying that because I have nothing but respect on all these gentlemen up here, and they, all of us, want to do what's best for Kershaw County, and especially for the employees of Kershaw County. And I think we've just heard, and I know this isn't court of law testimony, but we've heard from our accountant who was here that what was written was what was understood, and so I won't be able to support this as much as I want to. The principle of the matter just won't allow me. Now, when it comes time for budget, man, let's look at this. I think we're in a great spot to look at this and make some drastic changes, and that's the appropriate time to do it. And I'm all in at that point, but I'm just a little fearful I'm a little fearful of what the precedent that this might set if we would go this route. Thank you.
Mr. Bozard.
The people that work for Kershaw County is paramount for me. I agree that they need to be taken care of, which I'm going to try to do in every best I can. I also agree with Mr. Gardner that this needs to be tabled for tonight and come back up in budget session.
Point of order, we didn't use the word tabled.
No, you didn't say that.
We got an amendment.
I'm saying that in my
Okay,
motion.
all right, thank you.
I'm not making that motion. But the people, like I said, are paramount that works for this county, and I want to do everything I can for them. But I need some time to think about it, and I think if we can put this thing off and coming up in budget year, we'll be better off for everybody else, including the employees, and that's who I'm after. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Tucker, if you can wrap it up, we'll move to a vote.
Yes, sir, and I'm ready for a vote. I just want to make it clear to Mr. Bozard, the only way you're going to get this table if you're going to amend the amendment. And we've done the amendment and the second and the discussion. So it's either going to get voted up or voted down in just a few minutes. So it's not time to have more time because that's done run out. And I just want to say to my colleagues, I'm a bit set back with a couple of you because I know the fields that you're in, you act like you never had to rectify something before. No, you weren't here when it happened. But does that stop you from doing what's right? We all make mistakes, overlook things pass across this desk. We're not the perfect soldiers up here that we want to think we are sometimes. Things happen. But is that a reason not to? I mean, if they didn't correct some of the things that went on in the judicial system, everybody be sitting on death row or being hung or being slaughtered or whatever you want to call it, because when they found out that they were innocent, they refused to go back and do what's right. So I respect your position. I don't know too much if I agree with your reason.
Okay. Mr. Jones, can you wrap it up as having made the motion?
I
Please.
will. Mr. Tucker, I agree with everything you said. I did not make a mistake. I know what I was told. I know what was put before me. And then the employees were told this. You can go talk to a former clerk of court and some other folks, and they'll tell you that they told their employees that they better be glad they were hired prior to, because they're going to be grandfathered in. So somewhere things slipped by, and during a budget process, that has happened. But I can assure you this, there's no misunderstanding on my part as to what I thought was supposed to be. And Mr. Bozar, I would like to say this. You do want to do the right thing for the employees. We need your vote tonight. And I'm going to support you, Mr. Tucker, and I hope we get 4 votes to do that, because you're doing the right thing. And I agree with you on that. Thank you.
Very good. I'm ready to call the question. I want to first thank Mr. Quigley. I'd much rather hear you.
Mr. Chairman, I introduced him incorrectly. Mark Wood.
I'm going to say
Mark,
And
thank you.
It's not a problem.
Mark, I'm sorry, Mr. Wood. Yeah, thank you.
He's Quigley now.
He's Quigley now, forever. Thank you, Mark Wood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me just ask you one question.
Sure.
Do you like your job?
Oh, I love it.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I didn't love it, I wouldn't be here tonight.
That's right.
And you can see that these 7 men up here love this county.
Yeah, I mean, y'all got a hard decision to make, and I feel bad that if it was construed to members of council in a way that maybe it wasn't written up. I mean, I feel bad for that, and but I know y'all make the right decision, and it's not an easy decision.
Yeah.
But I just want to make, they asked me to come here so everybody knew
Yes.
what the potential issues were for your financial statement. So with that, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley.
And I do have a short statement is a retroactive action like this is very dangerous. And we've heard the financial liability piece that starts us down a road. One step taken means we got to take the next step and the next. And I'd rather it be taken deliberately as a part of the budget process. And that's where I'm headed. So with that,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
if I may, since you made that statement, would you allow Mr. Bozar to make his statement?
Did you have another one?
He did, but you didn't. He wasn't recognized.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
Mr.
just wanted to say
You're
that I
welcome.
do agree with Mr. Tucker down there, and I do support that motion.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we have a motion to amend it. Would you please state it again, Mr. Tucker?
Yes, sir. The motion is that we approve the $23,416.80 for the 50/50 plan starting from January 2011 to June 30th, 2019 for the 17 retired employees.
You retired during that time.
I said retired, yeah, during that time.
Well, let me ask you this. Once we do the 17, should we not also do the 82?
We will get there. We will get there.
So we're going to assume that additional liability when we go through. So essentially, we're down the path for increasing our liability by several $1 million. Is that what you're voting on? I just got to make sure I
It's
understand.
not several, 1.5, several.
So the
No, but
discussion's
on this one-
continuing.
On this one,
Right.
but in effect, we move into a liability where 17 people have it, and then the other 82, is that correct, Mr. Carpenter? So if Mr.
Council's
Tucker's
not-
intent is that in January, you're going to bring us a budget, is that what you want to have Mr. Carpenter to do, bring in a budget that assumes this additional liability?
I want him to bring it to the workshop so we can figure out which way we need to go to best limit as much as our liability as possible to include these other 75 people that we have that are in our system. Yes, sir.
Is it
That is
75 or
correct.
is it 82?
Well, it's 76 that right now would be covered from the current coverage they have.
Okay. And so that's what we're going to do, is ask him to increase that? Or should he come back in with a judgment that says we can't afford that 17?
Mr. Chairman, his motion states what he wants, with all due respect.
I'm sorry, I'm leading this discussion, Mr. Jones.
I understand, but we're going to have discussion
I want to understand the
too.
liability that we just heard.
Well, we're going to all have
Mr. Wood.
discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I'll
You're
recognize
quite welcome,
you.
sir.
But I'm asking a question to someone else. Mr. Quigley, now Mr. Wood, said that we would assume a greater liability, and we are backdooring by a series of steps without having looked at the entire thing. I'm looking at you, and I'm telling you, this is a risky approach.
Incorrect.
And I don't know how many times.
So you're going to do one, and you're going to do them all.
I don't know how many times I'm going to tell you, this is the path and the step that I want to go tonight. And I will rest assured between our administrator and this council, we will look and choose the best paths moving forward. I have confidence in this staff and confidence in this council that we will do that, and we will vet it and do our due diligence.
Tell me about this. You heard it, I heard it, that the legislature is going to impose at least another $380,000 or more on this PIBA approach to get the state retirement fund sorted out. And on top of that, we have now taken a step where these wonderful 17 people, and I know some of them too, and I've talked to them. I don't know them all, but I know some of them. And the point is, let me ask the question. What we're doing is we're taking a step that I would suggest to you is irrevocable. You're gone down the path, or you must have the administrator come in and say, we couldn't afford that 17 because we can't afford every member of our workforce.
I don't know what he's going to come in with, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
first of
for
all.
sure.
But I'm willing to to listen and at what he recommends. And don't confuse the monies. The PEVA money is real money as far as what we have to do according to the General Assembly. This is book money, paper money, it's liability. It's not physical money that we raise taxes or move from an account. I don't want the people to get confused because you're up here trying to muddy the water.
Thank you.
Because it's two separate things. Heck, we can't even control the local government fund. We don't know what that is going to be year to year. And they keep saying they're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Well, do you
We
deny?
have no control over them.
Mr. Tucker, do you deny the point that if you've done it for 17, you got to do it for the others?
I am very interested and going to do my best. I will not make a promise tonight what will happen because I don't have that crystal ball sitting up here. But I'm going to do everything I can to do due diligence.
Then let me ask Mr. Jones, why did you bring in the entire package tonight instead of the 17 only?
Because I wanted the entire package to pass, and I would have supported the entire package. I would support it right now, and I support Mr. Tucker right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get weak-kneed and change my vote. I stand firm in the way I feel.
I see.
Thank you.
Does anybody need any further discussion of the liability? Mr. Connell has his hand up.
It's interesting when folks invoke do the right thing. We've all researched the issue and we have our own opinion about what's right or wrong. In my view, the right thing is not to expose the overall taxpayers and voters in Kershaw County to additional liability. It's not just about the funds necessarily, not just about the money, but it's a policy matter in that if we do this, if the majority of the council does this, we'll be creating a precedent that says, effectively, well, in spite of what the law is, in spite of what the words on the page are, 10 years ago I heard something different. So from 10 years ago to now, how many different ordinances have been passed? How many different budgets have been approved? How many other non-related to retirement benefit issues have come up where somebody can now say, well, you remember what you did last year with, or recently with retirement benefits? In spite of the actual law, what we understood is what controlled. And unfortunately, some people perhaps misunderstood. I mean, it's just a dangerous precedent that I don't think we should have to deal with on this council or future councils, or the taxpayers should have to look at that slippery slope. But I do agree that we can do, I mean, I'm ready to take care of these folks, the 17, all of them, and those who would retire in the future, next budget cycle, and increase it substantially. But I don't think we should hang on our hat what was understood over 10 years ago and has come across this desk multiple times, because it just sets a dangerous precedent on weakening the rule of law in Kershaw County.
Yeah, Mr. Bozard.
I'd like to, Mr. Carpenter, would you mind telling us what you think about this whole thing? You're the administrator. I know you wasn't here when this started.
Asking what they did with their employees, where he came from.
I'm talking to Mr.
Excuse me, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, thank you.
You're welcome.
As I've already said, Mr. Bozard to council, that if council chooses to go with the amended version, we can find $23,000 in the current budget. That's something which we can do. I would say, little clarification, Mr. Tucker, that is real money. That's not the OPEB. So that is money that would come from some line item. It's a difficult situation in the sense that a decision was made by county council, and that decision has stood for 9 years. To go back and reopen a decision from 9 years ago raises the potential of other issues being reopened and discussed. That is a Pandora's box. There are a number of decisions that have been made over the years by numerous councils going back 40 years. And the precedent has always been, to my knowledge, that previous council's decisions were adhered to. The current council can make decisions would make decisions going forward and change policies. So to answer your question, I'm not going to tell you my opinion of it, Mr. Bozard. I will always stand up for the employees of this county. I think a retirement plan, pay plans that are good is something that helps us as a community, and I want my employees and the employees of Kershaw County to receive retirement plans, pension plans, and payroll that is fair and is competitive for them. So I support employees being taken care of. But I would say that I think that in looking at how you take care of your employees, I just caution you in the middle of the year changing longstanding policies that previous councils have made.
Thank you.
All right, other
Mr.
comments?
Chairman, on behalf of what he told and so forth, and this other information that's come forward, Mr. Tucker, I can't support it.
Jesus.
Okay, we move now to votes. Mr. Tucker, all those in favor of the amendment Mr. Tucker made, please signify by raising your hand. That's Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, and Mr. Jones. All those opposed, so signify. Mr. Connell, Mr. Burns, Mr. Bozard, and Mr. Snodgrass, the motion fails. We move now to the main amendment, which is stated in hard copy, which goes to the retirement plan that was in effect at the time, the employees to be covered by the 50-50 plan, which would include hired after January 2011, and then it goes on to the age 65. Jimmy, do you want to restate it?
I don't think I need to restate my motion.
Okay,
It's on the
good.
table. Let's vote.
Very good. All those in favor of Mr. Jones' motion signify by raising your hand. Mr. Jones, and the motion, and all those opposed signify by raising your hand. Opposed signify by raising your hand.
I don't know what I'm.
Point of order, please restate.
Okay. Say again.
What was the motion?
Well, your amendment fails, so now
Oh,
we're
okay,
going
okay.
Mr. Jones'
All right,
motion.
got you. Okay.
So back to that. Mr. Jones has already voted against it and in favor of. All those opposed to
Voted
Mr.
in favor of.
In favor of, excuse me. All those opposed to Mr. Jones' motion signify by raising your hand. And it's Mr. Connell, Mr. Bozard, Mr. Burns, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Tucker, and Mr. Snodgrass, and the motion fails. So we move on now to the next item on the agenda, if I can catch up. And thank you, Mr. Quigley Wood. Thank you very much. The second item is new business, is item number 1, transfer of the detention center to the sheriff's office. It's at tab D. Is that up on the screen? Yeah, very good. Mr. Jones, this is yours to enter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. I would like to make the motion to get this on the floor for discussion and vote, that we transfer which it'll have to be done, I think, ordinance in 3 readings.
Yes.
But that I make the motion that we do that to get things rolling, to transfer the responsibility of the detention center to the sheriff.
Can we have a second?
Second, for the sake of discussion.
Second came from you, David, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yep, from Mr. Snodgrass. Mr. Jones, you want to open it up?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. As the sheriff said up here, he's not in a fight with County Council. He's made a request. He feels that he is the best qualified, most qualified to run the detention centers, as most sheriffs do within South Carolina, I believe. I believe it's about 75% now. He also mentioned that Sheriff Dennis Anthony of Sumter County, who they have their jail, and he's president of the Sheriff's Association, came and spoke on that behalf as well. And, we've had 2 months since we've looked at this issue. I know there's been a couple of meetings, council, but we've had 2 months, and I've heard a couple of you reached out to him, but I don't think all of you have, and that's a little bit disappointing on that. But he's not asking for any additional funds to run the jail. He's saying, I want to come in here, I want to make it better and run it with the existing monies that are on hand. If this thing doesn't work out, and there comes time we want him to run the jail, he may want more money to do it. But that's certainly not the case at this time. Right now, our current jail is under the fire service. And you know, when you look at the benefits of recruitment and retention, you know, I know that was brought up tonight by a couple of folks, you know, for non-certified patrol deputies to be hired, you know, from the jail. It gives them that experience. I've done both. I've been on the receiving end, and I've been on the offensive end. I've worked as a law enforcement officer. I worked as a detention center administrator, and they are different, but it's law enforcement. And as I said earlier, that's what sheriffs do. You know, you talk about consolidation of resources, and I'm just rehashing some of the things that the sheriff has already said within his presentation a while back. You know, with the command staff, transportation, court and government center security, and training. Those things would be a tremendous benefit. I think it's a win-win for Kershaw County. I support this. And I know that it had came up, I've been on county council 13 years. It came up one time in my second term. I also supported it at that time too, but it was voted down. But I would like to really encourage my colleagues to think about this, and let's move this forward tonight, because it's going to take, as I said, 3 readings to do it. But thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Snodgrass?
Yeah, this was kind of an interesting situation. I second it because I believe in the process, and I believe it's important to have this discussion. And you know, Mr. Jones had called me early on and said, "This is what I feel like I'm wanting to do. You know, will you help me get on the floor?" And at the time, I said, "Well, I can't make any promises of how I'm going to go either way. But you know, I have a lot of respect for you. I know you work hard, and I'll help you get on the floor." But you know, checks and balances is a term that we know well. It's ingrained in us from the beginning of our 9th grade civics class. It's just kind of a balance of how our government works, and so we know that our government works when we have a healthy system of checks and balances. And so the issue of Sheriff Bone running the jail has nothing to do with the person Lee Bone, and I think that's very important for us to have when we have this discussion. That everybody in this room understands that Lee Bone is an outstanding human being. He's an outstanding man, and does a phenomenal job running the Kershaw County Sheriff's Office. And I have no doubt that Mr. Sheriff Bone would do a fantastic job at running the detention center. However, I think it's important to have checks and balances. I think when you look at these 2 departments, the Sheriff's Department and the detention center, these are 2 departments that are well respected, not only in our region, but well respected in our state. And I think a part of that has to do with both of them are single-minded focus on their respective missions. You know, the Sheriff's Department is able to singly focus on the mission of law enforcement in our county. The detention center and their staff are singly focused on the importance of housing those who have been arrested, who are awaiting adjudication, to house them safely and effectively. And so tonight, it's easy to put a person with a policy. It's easy to say, "Well, I like Lee. I think Lee's the guy." But we have to remember that tonight is not about Lee Bone. It's about changing policy in our county, that a long-term policy in our county of checks and balances of there being this separation. And so, you know, as I look at that tonight, I was able to give you the second, but I'm open to seeing how this is going to play out as we go through our conversation. The things I think about is the current law enforcement climate that's in our country is under a microscope. And I wouldn't want to do anything to our sheriff's office that might put them even under more of a microscope, you know, by being not only the arresting officer, but also being the ones who house them. So I think it's a worthy discussion to be had. I think the good news is either way this vote goes, Kershaw County wins, because we've got great center at the detention center who will continue to do a great job. And we've got a great sheriff. But I think for me, it comes down, as this conversation plays out, for me, I'm looking at, are there issues, is there a reason significant enough to change standing policy in our county?
Other comments?
Yes.
Mr. Jones, please, sir.
I disagree with what you just said, Mr. Snodgrass, totally. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and this will draw more comments, I'm sure, but I've been involved in local government. Been involved in local government for quite a while with my time on county council and then my time as the jail administrator, director of special services, probably total about 38 years. Sheriffs run jails, that's what they do. You talk about checks and balances. I tell you right now, working for a sheriff is checks and balances because I worked for a sheriff before. Working for a county administrator's checks and balances. They are there no matter who runs the jail. You know, we talk about, well, what if we get a different sheriff in than Sheriff Lee Bone? Well, what if we get a different county administrator in? What if we get different county council members? I mean, that's just the way things work out. There's going to always be somebody replacing everybody in life. But I'm a firm believer that, you know, it was mentioned about, well, it's too large of a budget to combine both budgets. You know, you got the sheriff's department at what, 5-something million, then you've got the recreation department at 2.4 million. I mean, you've got large budgets in the county, and we are, I think, what, 28 million total. So it's not going to give the sheriff a majority. We still have the majority of the, well, we have all the budget control, but it's just, to me, it just makes sense to do that. And you know, I've knocked this around, I've knocked it around, and for the past 10 years. And I've always supported the sheriffs when they came before us requesting the jail. And you know, the jail was, I think, turned over to the county in 1988 because they couldn't get the funding for it. This man right here has come in and taken the sheriff's department, asked for no additional funds from the taxpayers. And yet he's taken it and he's filled, I think, about every position he's got, which hasn't been done for the last 5 years. There were many, many vacancies. But he's been able to take and reorganize and use monies on hand and not ask for any additional money from the taxpayers. And he's doing the same thing tonight with the jail. I think the sheriff has the right to have the jail if that's what he wants.
Thank you.
No, I'm not through, please. Thank you. I'm not through.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm just catching my breath. I really hope some of you will reconsider and vote to make this transfer possible. I think Sheriff Bone has done everything he can possibly do to show us that he's willing to make every effort possible to run this county with the least amount of additional funds as possible. And I think this would really, I don't know how many openings. Does the jail have any openings now? Do you know, do y'all have any openings?
Yes, sir, there's a couple openings.
How many?
Is it 4?
Okay.
Two.
Okay, 2. But it has been as high as what, 5, 6?
It fluctuates.
I can tell you now, when it comes to recruitment and when it comes to retention, the sheriff, I feel my opinion, would do a much better job at that. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Jones.
I would just make sure. Go ahead, Mr. Snodgrass.
I would say I agree with everything you said about Lee Bone over there. I agree with everything that you said about his effectiveness as a leader and his ability to come in and run the department, his sheriff's department, extremely well. My point is, I'm separating that in this discussion. I'm looking at, is there a circumstance, is there a situation at our detention center that would precipitate this need? And as I look at the staff and as I look at our detention center, I'm just not seeing that there's a circumstance that requires this. And that's all I'm saying. And I'm just making it clear that as I've moved through this issue, I've I've separated the person from the office. And I'm not worried about who's the next sheriff's going to be, because the voters of Kershaw County do a great job at electing sheriffs. I don't have any doubt about that. For me, it's just the policy, and just I think our detention center stands on its own merit.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Tom. Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, I've thought long and hard, and I had a nice meeting for about an hour and a half with Sheriff Ball, and My decision is not based on Sheriff Bone or anything else. I look at this as, our detention center isn't broken. I look at it like, why does it need fixing? So I can't support this. If we had issues and things like that, I'd be the first one to stand in line and say, we need a change. I just don't think we need a change. And that's got nothing to do with Sheriff Bond. I think if he had the jail, he'd do a great job. I think the next sheriff or whoever comes in would do a great job. But I can't support it because I don't think we need a change. I think you heard tonight that we have great results at our detention center. We do a good job with it. And I don't see the need for a change, and that's why I won't support this. And it has nothing to do with personnel or anything else. That's just the way I look at it. I don't think that it's broken, and I don't think it needs fixing. So I will not support this.
Other comments? Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Tucker.
For obvious reasons that have been stated tonight and throughout the county as the folks that I've spoken with, and once again, Sheriff and I, who I'm happy to say that I supported during this campaign and worked hard, did not agree on this decision. So I removed myself from the personal side early on with him, and he knew where I stood. I'm under the concept, and I use this analogy with him, I don't think the fox can guard the hen house. And I'll stick with that quote. I just truly believe in that. And then I had other citizens in the community that confirm, and then I heard what was said tonight. And I think that I have not heard anyone up here say tonight that the commander, Cato, Terrell, is doing a fabulous job. Fabulous job. He was doing a good job under Peggy, and he's been bumped up, promoted up to step in the field until we go through the process. And I've heard nothing but good things about him. And that didn't come from him tooting his own horn. That has come from the public and his boss. So I have to agree with Councilman Gardner on saying, if it's not broke, what are we fixing? What are we truly fixing? Let me give you some background on Sumter County. How many of you or did you know that Lee and Sumter County Detention Center is a combined detention center? And when Sheriff Anthony Dennis took over down there, that wasn't because it was ran so great. They were in a tumbleweed fall. There was nothing good about it. I know the former administrator from the jail, and I personally know the sheriff. There was nothing good about that going on down there. And so it was time of crises why they leaned on the sheriff to ask him to take it. And his first initial thought and answer was no. And then, of course, council continued to talk to him and encourage him, and then he looked into some things and he changed his mind. And I'm not telling you that they're doing a bad job down there because, first of all, I don't live down there and I don't sit on that council, but I can tell you our detention center up here is doing very well and it's not a problem. So I'm not ready to take the helm from the captain that's running the ship and move it to a new captain because there are these bright ideas of collaboration and synergy and all these big words we like to use to move forward. Because I will say, and Mr. Carpenter, you correct me, a lot of those things that the sheriff has presented as far as working through and with the detention center is open now to work with administration where he can still do some of the things, a feeder program. He just doesn't have control, but he can still basically recruit from the detention center and still, do other things as such as, the transportation part and things of that nature. But I don't think even the previous sheriff has come up to you and asked you of any of those collaborations. Am I wrong by stating that?
Mr. Tucker, the previous sheriff did not. Sheriff Bone has only been in office for a little bit.
Right.
So So he hasn't had a chance to do that. And I can't comment on what the law would say regarding his hiring employees versus mine. So I would defer that to him, what he can do that I can't.
But what I'm asking is the opportunity there. Does the opportunity exist?
Certainly, I'm always going to be open to that. Yes, sir.
So with that being said, it's nothing personal to you, Sheriff. It's just where I stood several months ago when we first had our conversation. And I have not actively recruited or advised anyone to feel the way I feel. I just feel the way that I feel from my experiences and from my information that I've received from my constituents and citizens of Kershaw County. Thank you.
Other comments? I'm ready to call a vote, but I do have a short statement here. The point is, I've talked to federal and state judges, and they all greatly oppose sheriffs being in charge of the detention center. And we've heard twice now from the public defender, and also in the previous minutes, the last time this vote came up some years ago, the public defender, who looks out for the rights of the accused, very strongly against that mixing of duties, not against the sheriff. And thanks to WPUB and the Chronicle, they both very faithfully captured her remarks. I very seldom refer to you two gentlemen for authority, but they were very faithfully captured my concern. So with that, I'm ready to call a vote. All in favor of Mr. Jones' motion, please signify by raising your hand. Mr. Jones in favor, and all those opposing signify by raising your hand. And it's Mr. Connell, Mr. Bozard, Mr. Burns, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Snodgrass, and the motion fails. We move now to the next item under new business, item number.
Mr. Chairman, one quick question to the administrator here. Mr. Carpenter, is there anything else you need from us to move forward to get the head of the detention center settled in and job closed?
My understanding, Mr. Tucker, now is that with council's action, that I will proceed with the process of searching for and hiring an administrator.
Thank you,
my
sir.
understanding
Thank
that
you.
is the will of council.
Thank you, Sammy. Good question. Okay, item number 2 under new business is Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee reappointment. It's at tab E. You see Beth Ford. She is asked to be reinstated. Can we have a motion for Beth Ford?
So move.
Mr. Jones, a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Gardner. Any discussion? By way of discussion only, there are 2 vacancies. If y'all could help me find out some more to help people to fill those positions. With that, we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And Beth Ford is reappointed. We move to item number 3, which is reappointments of 3 persons for the Clean Community Commission. We have Mr. Webb here, who's not being reappointed, but his term remains. Thanks for coming, Tom. The 3 names are Wanda Swan, Laina Shoemake, and Dennis Outlaw. It's on the board there for you, and it's at tab F. I propose we move to a single vote since this is a reappointment. Can we have a motion to reappoint those 3 fine citizens?
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of clarification.
Yeah.
I just recently heard from Laina Shoemake. She's going to be teaching at a new school this year. She was the chairperson of that committee, so it's a sad loss for us, but she won't be able to continue on. I'll be bringing another applicant to this council at some point at the next meeting or thereafter.
So, Mary, should we then remove Laina from the?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're down to 2. Wanda Swan, thank you very much, and Dennis Outlaw, and that is a sad loss. Can we have a motion for those 2 other remaining?
So made.
Mr. Bozard, second. Mr. Connell, thank you very much, Ben. That was a good short stop there. Any discussion? We'll tell you that Wanda Swan and Tom and Judge Hardis and all those people have been meeting very much with our sheriff to talk about litter and grants, and we will soon see a proposal from them, and I thank them. Now let's move to a vote. All those in favor to reappoint Wanda and Dennis Outlaw, please signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. We move next to the item number 4, if you can, it's on the board. We have 3 vacancies in the library board, and we have our world award-winning librarian here tonight. Thank you for coming. I will move now through a series of nominations by person. There are 4 people competing. First, can we have a motion to appoint Annette Little?
I make that motion to appoint Miss Annette Little.
Mr. Tucker, a second?
Second.
David, thank you very much. Any discussion about the appointment of Annette Little? Seeing there is none, let's move to a vote. All those in favor, so signify. And it's unanimous. The next person down the list is Johnny Cornegi, the younger. Tom Gardner, you would like to make a motion?
I would move to appoint Johnny
Second?
Cornegi to the board.
Second.
Mr. Snodgrass, second. Very good. Any discussion? Seeing there is none, we move to a vote. All those in favor of Johnny Cornegi, so signify. And it's unanimous, Mary. And we now have, next one down the list is Tara Simmons. Can we have a motion? Ben, perhaps.
Mr. Chairman, I would make that motion. It's actually Tana Simmons.
Tana, oh gosh, Tana. Thank you. Tana Simmons, a second, please.
Second.
Second from Tom. Thank you very much, sir. And with that, any discussion? Seeing there is none, we move to a vote. All those in favor, so signify. And I apologize to Tana. Thank you very much. It's unanimous, and that closes the slots that are available. With that, we move to the next item on the agenda. Let me catch up with myself, which is item number 5, a bid to renovate the main library conference room at Tab H. Mr. Carpenter, can you introduce it?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have tonight in front of you a bid has been received for renovating the main library conference room. This is the project that the Friends of the Library have approached the county to proceed with. They are funding this for it. The low bid has been received from Mika Contracting of Lexington. The council is asked to approve the awarding of the bid to Mika Contracting for $57,391.20.
Can you just talk about what the scope of work is, please?
It's merely renovating the conference room at the library itself. The main
No
library.
electricity, plumbing,
Just
tearing out? Okay.
Just basically
Thank
working
you.
on the answer.
Can we have a motion to approve the recommendation of the low bid, please?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve the low bid for the renovation of the library.
And a second?
Second.
From Mr. Snodgrass? Thank you. Any discussion? I just say we got the best librarian in the world and the best library. It's an old facility, and I'm glad this is happening. And I watch her behave at Elgin and Bethune and elsewhere with the bookmobile, and it's a very vital part of our county. Thank you. With that, Ben.
Quick point, maybe for the future, actually. I remember 2+ years ago, we had a small building that we're going to build, and it was subject to Davis-Bacon funds, and that required bidding from certain companies that tend to bid just way over anything you would expect to pay per square foot. Even though it's a low bid, I see $57,000 for a conference room, and it makes me wonder, what is the value? I'll support the low bid this time, but so that I can be more informed and maybe the rest of council in the future, I'm not looking for engineering drawings or anything, but I'd at least want to know roughly how many square feet we'd be renovating, and are we using some high-end materials, or you can build a house for $57,000. It'd be a small one, but you could build one. So I just want a better understanding of return on investment whenever we're doing these kind of projects.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Very good. Other comments? Very good. Well, point taken, Ben. Thank you. With that, we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Mr. Snyder, okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much, Mary. It passes unanimously. Move to the next item, which is a bid, item number 6, to renovate Elgin 1 and 2 sewer pumps. It's at tab I, and it's on the board. Mr. Carpenter.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, this is a bid to replace, not to renovate.
Okay.
This is part of the Southern Loop Sewer Project. As you recall, the first step was to replace those pumps, the Elgin 1 and 2. Those are some of our larger pumps. We received 2 responses to the bid. The low bid Site Concepts of Lugoff, South Carolina for $197,335. Staff recommends your approval.
Can we have a motion to approve the low bidder there, please?
Motion. Second.
So move in second.
Who's got the first?
I do.
You want to argue? Okay, Mr. Snodgrass, and then seconded by Mr. Tucker. Thank you. Let's move into a discussion. Please, Mr. Snodgrass.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes, sir.
I support the staff in this move. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, Mr. Jones, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of County Council. Ken, you don't see any issues with the fact that we have on the agenda, it says bid to renovate?
I think it comes under the definition,
Okay.
doesn't it? Part of a building, isn't it?
Well,
said
it's inside
replace.
the building. Yes, sir. I mean, they're in a building. Yes, sir. It's the pumps themselves.
Yeah.
But is there a difference between replace and renovate?
Well, to replace pumps or renovate, I think Mr. Carpenter's saying they're renovating a pump station,
We're replacing the pumps.
in a pump station.
He said he's replacing
Yes,
the
sir.
pump.
Yes, sir. They're in a building.
You're putting words in his mouth.
Well, I think he's got the amount of the bid in here, in the agenda package, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And he's saying that he's renovating pump stations by putting new pumps in it. I think it fits the definition, only, Mr. Jones, particularly because it's disclosed in the agenda package, the exact matter.
So you don't think the word renovate is different from the word replace?
Well, it's a different,
Councilman Jones, that's my fault.
I can't hear you.
That's my fault.
That's okay.
I picked up renovate.
I'm not upset about it. I just want some clarification on it. You do an outstanding job, by the way, and you know I feel that way. So this has nothing to do with you. This is just, because the administrator, I think he reviews it, and I think the chairman reviews it, and it has renovate, and we're saying we're going to replace. So I'm just asking the question.
Mr. Jones, but for the agenda package contains the actual bid in the package, which I think supplied to everybody, isn't that correct?
Correct.
And it says that there are two bids to replace, it does use the word replace, for sewer loop improvements. The clerk said she used the word renovate, but it says Elgin 1, Elgin 2.
Okay.
I think the
I'm good.
public and the council knows what the agenda item is.
I'm good.
Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Ken.
Ms. Bose, I'm willing to reinstate my motion if we need to.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm good.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'd like to thank you both for your English authority, and it's well stated, and I accept responsibility for not having reviewed thoroughly. But with that, I think we can move to a vote. But I do have a question. Is a little later on, are you going to be able to show us, Vic, in due time, how there's a progression of these at some point, and these sewer pumps being replaced? And I wouldn't want to do it tonight, but I just
Absolutely.
out of
Yes, sir.
curiosity.
As we get into the fall, we'll be discussing the whole Southern Loop project in
Oh,
greater
that's right.
detail again.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful. Thank you. Way ahead of us as usual. With that, let's move to a vote. All those in favor, so signify. Very good. It's unanimous and passes. Thank you with that. I move to the next item, item number 7, which is cancellation of the second meetings in each of the next 4 months, 24 September, 22 October, 26 November, subject to a call session if necessary. Can we have a motion, Mr. Gardner?
So moved.
A second
Second.
from Mr. Bozard. Discussion. Mr. Gardner, do you want to lead us off?
Well, it just seems that based on tonight's meeting, that we haven't had a meeting in a while, there's just not enough to substantiate or have the need. We can always call a meeting, so I think that it's appropriate that we cancel those meetings.
Very good. Any other discussion? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Council, in all due respect to my colleague, and I do respect him, I absolutely disagree with this. And I think it seems like we're on a path to go to one meeting a month. July, August, September, October, November. That's almost a half a year that we've canceled a meeting, and you know, I just can't go along with that. I think there's plenty of business for us to address, and so I will be voting against that tonight.
I do need to clarify again. Thank you, Mr. Jones, for good points.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. DeBose made it very clear that we need to be predictable, and where there is actually circumstances to cancel or to schedule. And a call meeting is very much in that. So thank you, Mr. DeBose, for pointing that out. Mr. Bozard.
Yes, thank you. And knowing this was coming up, I was down at Hilton Head, the rest of them, last weekend. And in my classes, I had 2 on Saturday and I had 1 on Sunday. And I asked in my class how many of the counties, and in one class was 20 counties representative out of 46 in South Carolina, how many of them had 1-a-month meetings. And out of that 20, 8 of them said they had 1-a-month meetings. So based on that, and in my second time I asked, we had, I think about everybody in the county, I mean in the state was represented there, and that number come out to be about the same, about 45%. So we're not the only county that's, as Mr. Jones mentioned, that's looking for once a month. I'm not saying I'm looking for, I'm not saying I'm looking for that, but we're not the only counties that's looking at it and doing it.
Let me be clear about the motion. The motion is in the only through December, and a call meeting could be brought back in. Mr. Gardner, is it your intent, perhaps, when you made the motion, that we have 2 a month and work sessions once we go into January through July in the budget season?
I will probably be bringing that motion that I made this past year again, that y'all so quickly voted down last time. But yes, probably we'll make a motion somewhat, whether that's relative now or not, to have 2 meetings through the first 6 months and 1 meeting for the last 6.
Especially during the budget. Okay.
Yeah, the budget, I think we need 2 meetings first half of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Bozard. Other comments?
Chairman.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to belabor this. This is, but I do want to clarify. I know that in one-on-one conversations with several of you, I did say, yeah, that's a good idea, but I was not aware that we were talking about doing it this year. So just because in the spirit of always being somebody who, what I tell you behind closed doors is what I come out here and do. I just want to make sure I clarify that. I won't be supporting this because I feel like it's important. A previous council before I was on it set the calendar in December for this upcoming year, and that's what has been published to the public, and I would prefer just to stick with that. Now, I'm more than welcome to have the conversation in December for changing up the schedule once we get into 2020, but I won't be supporting these amendments.
Other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Ben, please.
So as I hear about this tonight and think about it, there's probably some very limited or nominal cost savings because we have people here with overtime that love hearing us talk into the late hours. I'm just trying to think through pros and cons. What's the process again for a called meeting, if you could explain that, Mr. County Attorney?
Chairman can call a call meeting or a majority of county council.
24 hours notice.
And then
We got 24 hours notice.
And then could you explain what the notice is that goes to the media and otherwise?
Well, Freedom of Information Act, you have to give 24 hours notice and post the agenda. As a practical matter, this county council typically, including the chairman, has given more notice than 24 hours. That's all you have to do in 24 hours. You have to post the agenda too, and send the agenda out to the media. 24 hours.
Other comments?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
So what I'm hearing tonight, this is kind of the first, when I saw it on the agenda, because I've talked to nobody about this, it seems to be the direction of this county council that we're going to go to 1 meeting a month. Well, we're doing it now. If y'all vote this in, it's 1 meeting a month for the rest of this year. And that's what your intentions are for next year is what I've heard.
What I thought I heard, Jimmy, if I can speak, is
You can.
only through December. That's what's before us.
I understand, but did you not just talk about something about it in January when we come back?
Well, what I said was that'll be addressed in December when we set the schedule. But it's my view, and I think I heard Mr. Gardner say, I'm not going to speak for him, that once we get into the January and budget cycle, we'll go to 2 meetings a month plus 2 or 1 or 2 and maybe sometimes 3 working sessions until the budget's passed on the 30th of June. Now, that's not what's before us tonight, but we can discuss that in December.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Reminder that we don't set the calendar in January, we set it in December.
That's
Our
what I
last
said.
meeting, you said that we would look at setting it for the next year in January, but it will be set in December.
That's
So
what I said, I'm sorry.
if
But
people-
thank you for that
yeah,
clarification.
If people are wanting some input, be ready to have that addressed in December's meeting.
Absolutely. Other comments? I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Burns, Mr. Bozard, and Mr. Connell. All those opposed, so signify. Mr. Jones and Mr. Snodgrass. The motion passes, and we will next meet, unless there's a call meeting, in the second Tuesday of September. With that, we move to item number 8, which is the administrator's recognition. Sir, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, as we talk about our employees in some detail tonight, I want to take a chance and take a moment to recognize one of our employees, something which I'm going to start doing as the opportunity presents itself to me to share it with you in this community, just the kind of people we have working for us. Star Medlin is an employee of our 911 office, and you see that happy face carrying in front of her that recognition. I'll tell you what she did. She saved someone's life by administering and teaching them how to administer CPR over the phone until someone could get there. And someone's with us today because she did the job that she did. Amen. And I just want this council to see the kind of people we have working. Star, thank you very much. I told her she didn't have to talk if she didn't want to. So.
I'll take the hug.
Congratulations and thank you.
I can repeat it if y'all want.
Thank you, Star.
Thank you very much.
That concludes.
Absolutely.
Mr. DeBose? No, council briefings. Starting with you, David.
I want to thank everyone for coming here tonight, and we tackled some tough issues. I do want to take some time to highlight a new business that's happening in our county. Those of you who know, I take time to recognize what I call a District 5 Pride Award, and that's a recognition of small business and entrepreneurs who are taking interest in putting private dollars back into some commercial buildings and in residential buildings and rehabbing them, and particularly along the Highway 1 North Corridor, which is certainly in need of that. And so always grateful for those. And so I want to recognize, it's called there's a new sewing and sewing material shop in town called SC Material Girls at 1309 Jefferson Davis Highway. Not only do they have fabric and things of that nature, but their main thing is really having classes in the evenings where they bring groups in, they teach them, and they do different projects. And so they took a building that was vacant along the Highway 1 North Corridor, and it's beautiful. And so I just wanted to recognize them and thank them for putting dollars back into Kershaw County. Thank you.
Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and council members. A couple quick things. I heard the word setting precedents up here used several times, even from our administrator, when we were discussing the benefits for the employees. But I watch precedents being set, Mr. Chairman, by you, and I just need to highlight it because I plan on using every legal Robbins Rules of Order and our own policies if it happens again. I've never seen discussion, call for the vote, and then we reopen and pressure our colleagues to change their vote and then call for the question. That is not the way we rule up here and the way that we act or conduct. And that makes me guard my vote that much more precious, what I want to do now, because if you guys are not getting the votes you want, then you don't take it. You discuss it until you change minds and hearts. And that ain't what you're supposed to do up here. You're supposed to let everyone vote on their own conscience and heart.
Correct. Absolutely.
And that did not happen tonight.
Amen.
I will not end on a sour note because I don't wake up on a sour note. Mr. Cato, thank you again for what you're doing. Keep plugging and head up, shoulders back, and move full speed ahead. Mr. Sheriff Lee Bone, you do the same. Keep doing what you're doing and moving this county forward in a good direction. And just know, tonight I was not on your side, but I'm always on your side. And that's not just lip service, and you know that. I want to state, too, that we're doing a lot of good things in the COG. We had a COG meeting just last night down at Santee Lynch's, and there is some efforts being made to partner up with SC Thrive and other groups to give better services to our region. I will be bringing more information about that and other opportunities that we're doing down there within the next month or so. But I also want to state, too, that this past June I was elected to the second vice chairman of that board of that COG. That concludes my report.
Mr. Garner.
Just it's been mentioned, but again, our Ponytail softball team, congratulations on them. They represented not only Kershaw County, but the state of South Carolina very well. They won their first two games. Weren't quite as lucky in the last two, but first team, I think, ever from Kershaw County girls softball to make it to the World Series, and I think we're going to honor them at the next meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Thank you. That's
Mr. Bozard.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I did not vote for the park down here by the river, but I go down about every Saturday, and I talk with some of the people, and I was very much surprised at how many people do use that. One man told me that they like to go down and fish because he lives in town and he doesn't have a place on the river to go up on the lake, but he does now, and that's good. That's good to know that people are using it. And I saw a lot of people down there. A man and his son was out walking around and checking everything out. But before I go any further, I want you to tell Shane that that place down there is very clean, and I'm glad and see how they're taking care of it, Mr. Carpenter, because it is very clean. They're keeping it very clean, and the people using it, I didn't see any trash anywhere around. But I'm happy to know that people are using it. They're using the facility. It's not being overrun now by no means. I don't mean that. But they're down there using it, and that's what we want them to see them do. This past Wednesday, I made a trip to Washington for a conference up there that was with North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And the conference was on Thursday, and I came back Friday morning. The conference was very helpful in a lot of ways to me because there's some projects that I'm trying to get done And I got some information there that just might help get it accomplished. But the speaker there was outstanding. Sonny Perdue, who is the Secretary of Agriculture, he's also the past governor of Georgia. That is one outstanding man, and he's an outstanding speaker. Mick Mulvaney came on, and he didn't have a subject. He opened it up to anything anybody in the room wanted, and there was over 250, 300 of us in the room. And he shouldn't have done that because I think maybe he might have got more than he wanted. But the question of transportation studies came up, and he spent some time with it and answering our questions and so forth. But he asked me one that I couldn't answer. But I am going to try to take care of that Monday or Tuesday when I get back. Been looking for money to take care of these transportation studies in Kershaw County that the study is complete. We're just trying to find money. And that's what I was doing, trying to find money. He didn't promise me anything, but he did say that he would try to help any way he could. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Connell.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, would just like to thank Lena Shoemake for her service on the Clean Community Commission in its, I guess, renewed inception year. They did a great deal of work. If you recall, the road cleanup led to hundreds and hundreds, it's kind of sad to say, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bags of trash that we cleaned up. And the county at its entry points looked a lot better, renewed a sense of pride in the community that I think we need for those communal spaces and common areas so we don't have so much litter. And also wanted to say, Sheriff LeBone, obviously I support you. Love coming and cooking for the Sheriff's Department. Contributed financially to your campaign, believe you in many, many ways, but we just happen to disagree on this particular issue. And I think the only thing we didn't get you this year in your budget request was that fingerprint scanner we were talking about. I hope you get it next year, and whatever else you need to effectively carry out the law enforcement duties in Kershaw County. Also very proud of the athletes that competed representing Kershaw County in softball. It's a tough thing to be a student athlete. I mean, it's really hard between the required testing you have from the state of South Carolina and the federal government, and then try to balance practice on top of that, and then any other extracurriculars you do, it's really tough. So those and so many other student athletes will be engaging next week in what it is to be a student athlete. School's about to start. I just hope and pray that all the kids will have a great year, be able to work hard, be safe, and study well. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. I have just a few things I want to mention. One, I'd just like to take a moment to just say that a friend of mine, Rick Aaron, the chairman knows him, friend of the chairman's as well, passed away last Thursday, and our thoughts and prayers go to the family. And Sheriff, appreciate all you've done where that's concerned as well, too. He'll surely be missed. Mr. Bozar, I haven't seen those people you're talking about, but I'm going to be looking, and just haven't seen them. And also, I'd like to say, Mr. Tucker, thank you for standing up tonight on what. No, you can't tell you sometimes. But anyway, bottom line, I mean, speaking out, I too, Mr. Chairman, I have never seen what happened tonight happen before on County Council. It was obvious that you were not going to close it out till you made sure you had the 4 votes. We had already, and I was sitting there praying nobody would get weak-kneed, but it happened. And bottom line is, you heard that there were 4 votes for it, and you were relentless in making sure. And I'm going to tell you, that's not in the policy, sir. I don't think you have that right to do that. And I'm not, personally, as one council member, I'm not going to stand for it. Because if we're going to close out discussion, call the question, take the motion, take the second, and then absolutely pound, and ground until we get our 4 votes, that is not the way this county council works. That was unheard of. You've been here 14, 15 years. I've been here 13 years. That doesn't make us any experts. But I hope, Mr. Tucker, that you and I are not the only ones that feel that way. But so anyway, now, on another note, I also think that when this county council takes trips to Hilton Head, that there should, and there may be tonight, but there hasn't been, that there will be a report by the chairman or some member of county council.
I'll get you one.
But it's usually always been done by the chairman. I just like to see that and have a recap as to what happened and what went on. Because I know there's a lot of good information there, and I know you guys put forth time in going to the classes and everything. And also, I'm going to leave on a very good note. I'm like Mr. Tucker. Sheriff, the Association of Counties stated, because I called and talked to Mr. Robert Benfield, that there was less liability with the sheriff running the jail than the county. So I'll leave it at that. Mr. Chairman and members of the County Council, thank you so much for the time. I really enjoyed this, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much. I go down to the Wateree River every Saturday morning with my fly rod. I wish I could report I was using the right lure, but I meet a number of people back down there, and this thing will only grow. I think we'll hear shortly from our administrator about what the progress is of creating a better environment down there and going to phase 1 to include a park ranger. So I assure you it is used very often. About the trip down to Hilton Head, the hour is late, but I will summarize a couple of them. Most of the counties that I talked to, in fact, I didn't talk to any county that didn't go to one a month after they got the budget done. Now, I don't have the same sampling size. It wasn't scientific, but that's the way it went down. So that's where we are today. That was one of the major discussion items. Another one was the continuing issue with compensation. As you heard tonight, and my great concern about risk on that regard, and this ought to be a budgetary item, and I would hope Mr. Carpenter will set that up for us in the new budget cycle. The recession is over. That is the good news. And we perhaps can look at compensation and pension, but we don't know. And we don't know what the budget's going to do, and we don't know moreover, what the legislators are going to do to us. So we'll find out. But I think with a booming economy and full employment, local sales tax and LGF might be more favorable. Those were the major issues for me. Reinforcement on ethics and discussions with Councilman Snodgrass, our newest councilman, about the classes he went to were more than just fundamental, and it was interesting to hear his perspective, and I thank you for going. Those of you that went down and took time away from your family or with your family, I think you all profited. And a more formal report, Mr. Jones, since you asked for one, will be forthcoming.
Thank you.
We broke ground today. Many of you were there at Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Connell were there. And what we did is we have turned a corner on a new pathway to the American Revolution in the South, a pathway to telling our story and that of our ancestors. It is a great, painful story about liberty. It's an amazing story. So about a year from now, we'll start seeing that thing. And when the city of Camden gets through building it, thanks to the efforts of Vic Carpenter and others like him, we will see a great event. Secondly, we will break ground on Thursday, and I hope most of you can go there because Gene Wise, my predecessor, led us on a joint use campus that this council put into motion with the CCTC funding and much of, the work that Vic Carpenter did. And along with other partners, we will cut the ribbon on Thursday, and I hope all of you can make it. It is a great day for economic development. A little later on that same point, we'll have an executive session on 2 contractual matters regarding economic development. There will not be a vote. It'll be an update. Lastly, on parliamentarian items, I'm not perfect, and if I offend people, I apologize. But generally, I'd like to ask also, in reciprocal, that when you bring in such a complex item that essentially opens the budget again with hundreds of thousands of dollars, that impacts every employee we have, that we not see charts for the first time less than an hour before this meeting, that we not see the motion, and I have no idea what the motion was before we come in here, when it was 17, or was it 82, or was it 86? That's a complex issue, fundamentally impacting our liabilities and the taxpayers. And I was quite pointed on that as a parliamentarian issue. There's another parliamentarian issue, that when you vote on the minutes 3 times and on a policy 3 times and more than once for each successive year to this point, the men up here take responsibility for what they voted on. And that's why there was such passion up here. Passion on 3 who were here, and then the passion by those of us who inherit this issue. And another 6 months to look at it and take it apart is why I held for what I did. Now, as to the calling of the question on the parliamentarian, I'll have to go back and look, but I called the question, and then Mr. Jones asked if Mr. Bozard had a further comment. And I remember that. So if I'm wrong on that,
It'll show it.
it will certainly will. And I hope you will come back to me, Mr. Tucker, and give me further instructions. I'm always welcome to that sort of instruction. All right. Well, with that, Mr. Administrator, would you take it from here?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, the information that you received was information that I had been compiling and put together. I did not myself have it until it was received by all members of council at the same time.
Right.
So this is not something that was a deliberate effort. It was my efforts just did not bear fruit until that time, just before the council met itself. It didn't change the basic information that was already in the packet. It just added more information to it.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
You did a great job. It's just a complex topic. Go ahead, please, sir.
I'm going to give council a brief update on a number of projects. You can see on the screen the projects. I won't necessarily read them to you, but essentially the projects that we have a number of them. The Mesa Lane EMS station, as you can see, we're ready to start landscaping it starting this week. We've done that. EMS should be moving into that station. We hope sometime in early September. Governor's Hill Road, that's part of the project that we have, economic development projects, to get the Governor's Hill site ready for industry. We started work on 3,300 square feet of gravel road in it. October 26th is the date for completion, as you see. The entrance sign will be visible from the interstate, so people understand that there is an industrial park there as well. The Heritage Point wastewater line, the engineers are done with it. Information been submitted to DHEC. We hope that it should be approved by them in mid-September. The disturbed land that it took to get to there should be completed, as well as we've already started seeding it. This building, the modifications to the government center, tomorrow we begin modifications to this chamber for safety upgrades. The safety upgrades will essentially be putting a barrier, a half wall, not a wall, but a half wall between council. And it's unfortunate we have to do that, but anyone who has read news stories in recent years is aware that public bodies are at risk, as people have unfortunately brought their anger into meetings and sessions. So we'll be doing other work as well for that. We have finished the executive session room, so a little bit of paint still needed. And then the parking lot, we're under the final design for that and review for the parking lot, which will make it safer, because the current parking lot with access and egress onto Broad Street is dangerous. It's too narrow of a entranceway. People pull out blindly into the street, so we'll be looking to relocate the entrance to this building into a side road, either Walnut Street or Little Street or both, in a fashion that, again, makes it safe for our citizens to enter and exit this facility. Our CCTC landscaping is, we have, the final design is underway. It'll include the rail to trail section on that project, as well as incorporating the new, the old ATEC new WTC landscaping. Our public notification sign at Mesa, as you know, at the airport, we have our first public notification sign. This will be our second. The idea being ultimately, as we work on county facilities, to put these access signs where our citizens can see and get information from severe weather alerts, amber alerts, silver alerts, information about county council meetings and workshops coming up. People complain frequently to us that they just don't know. And so we're trying even further to get the information out into the communities that we serve. The Armory on DeKalb Street, we've issued RFQs to secure an architect engineer to begin evaluating what we need to do to the exterior of that building, and then an RFQ on the roof itself. These are funding that were approved by the General Assembly of South Carolina, $500,000 in the current budget. So we'll be able to make some significant changes to the exterior and to the interior of that building as well. We've begun the process to get an architect to design our new fire station in Cassett. The reason we need to do that is because the old architect that designed the building in Blaney is no longer in business, and we cannot find copies of the plans, so we will have to redesign the building, though it'll be as similar to the Blaney one as we can make it. Though we did try to use existing plans, that just was not possible to happen. But we have acquired the land, or in the process of acquiring the land in Cassett, so we can move on that. Important to everyone is our Casey West ball fields. We have been assured by the Armstrong Construction they'll be completed Friday of this week. We're now working on the specs for lighting of those remaining 4 fields. The Recreation Commission has approved us moving forward with lighting of it, and we're optimistic at this point. We've not received bids yet because we've not put out for it, but we're optimistic that if the bids would come in a range we think they should, that we can put up funding for put up all 4 lights on those fields. All 4 fields would be lit. The Wateree River Park, we opened the bids today at 3 o'clock. The bids have not been finalized yet, but based on the bids we received, phase 1 can be completed for the funding the council has allocated. Phase 1 again includes the canoe and kayak launch. It includes parking. It includes a walking trail and a nature trail in it. So it'll begin us moving forward. Phase 1 therefore should be completed. We would anticipate sometime by spring of next year that phase 1 will be open for that park. And at that point, it'll be open 7 days a week, 24/7. Yes, sir.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes, sir.
is there anything in your plans to that walking trail down inside the creek to make that a little wider, especially up at the top? There's too much overhanging
Yes, sir.
limbs and trees.
Yes, sir. The current trail was staff created. This will be a design trail. One will be natural, which will be the trail. Then there'll be a walking path that'll be a hard surface for people to go and walk laps or whatever as well. So people can go and walk the trail around the river, which will be a natural one, and quieter, softer, and then the walking trail itself on the interior. With the splash pad, I put up the schedule for you to see. Again, the city of Camden and Kershaw County are jointly sharing this construction project. The date we start in August, we've already begun the scheduling of the master planning with it. We would anticipate construction starting in December, and next summer, Memorial Day, when the pool opens, it'll open as well. If you've been by the airport recently, the construction has been underway for some time on the drainage project. We anticipate it being completed by mid-November. And the Elgin Park, again, the General Assembly approved funding for the creation of the park in Elgin, our first park in Elgin. The final design is underway. Bidding will be received in fall, and we expect completion by June of 2020 for that project as well. And I believe that those are all the projects I had to report on for you. I also wanted to give you an update on the airport. The FBO for the airport, Camden Jet Center, many years our FBO had notified us that they will be terminating their lease in September of this year. Staff has been working to ensure that there is a transition that is smooth and is seamless so that citizens and aviators notice no difference between the county and the FBO running it. Council will be provided with the information, and a decision will be made by this council whether to go out for bids for a new FBO or for the county to run it itself. But in the interim, staff will have stepped in, and you'll notice no difference in the running of it as well. And I also just needed to notify council the bids for the pump stations were very important tonight. We had to, back a few weeks ago, issue an emergency purchase order for $19,000 to keep the current pumps running. So we are, again, they're past their lifespan, and we couldn't have come sooner with approving the purchase of those 2 pumps. And last thing, as Mr. Gardner and others pointed out, the ponytails, at their request, we'll be recognizing them in September. We had seen if they wish to be recognized tonight, but at their request, they asked to be delayed until September. And members of council, that is my report.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Yes, sir, Mr.
I need to ask him one question.
Go ahead, Mr. Bozart.
I was asked down, I think it was last Saturday, is there a rumor going around there's anything in the process for us to take over Goodall State Park?
No, sir.
No?
No, so there's, when the Rec Commission did their priority list, one of the items they mentioned was the county assuming Goodall State Park. So they thought that would be something good for the future, but that was, all it was a future project to consider. The county itself has never entered into any serious discussions with the state parks. Now, the state park has told us that they would not be unhappy if the county would take over Goodall. But the county has not come to them and said that we will take over Goodall State Park. No, sir.
Okay, so right now we just looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't say that at some point this council wouldn't decide to do it, but this is nothing that staff is seriously pursuing, no, sir.
Thank you.
First I've heard.
Okay, Mr. Carpenter, thank you for that update on the projects. Can you, for the ones that may want this electronically, please send it out? I know
Absolutely.
I'm one of them, so we can share with the citizens.
Absolutely, yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right, at this time, I think, Mr. DeBose, you have a legal executive session for us. Will you state that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, acting as chairman.
Whatever.
It's my understanding that we need an executive session to discuss 2 contractual matters.
Okay, we've heard from our county attorney that we need an executive session for 2 contractual
Along
matters
the economic development, I believe.
along the economic development of operations. Is there a motion?
I so make the motion.
Motion is made by Mr. Bozart. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gardner. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Or raise your hand, I'm sorry. Raise your hand. Okay, any nays? All right, it's unanimous. Miss Mary, and what time do you have?
We all make mistakes.
Okay, 7:57. Let's go in our big conference room right back, and we won't be long. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Before I recognize that motion, there was executive session and no action needed nor taken. Motion to adjourn again?
Second
All right. Motion made by Councilman Gardner, seconded by Councilman Cornell. Any further discussion? Any further? No. All in favor, raise your hand. It is unanimous, Ms. Mary.